The Bold and the Beautiful just detonated its most explosive twist in years, and the fallout will rock every corner of Forrester Creations. In a shocking return from the dead, Caroline Spencer has stepped back into the spotlight with medical documents, irrefutable testimony, and a cold, focused mission to reclaim her son, destroy the lies that buried her, and expose the power-hungry manipulation that has poisoned the Forrester dynasty from within. What the public believed was a tragic death in 2019 is now exposed as an elaborate ruse, a fake demise carefully crafted to protect Caroline from a vicious extortion scheme that reached dangerously close to her family and her son. And now, with her survival no longer a secret, she's here to demand justice. She's not alone. She's brought receipts. And she's brought Luna Nozawa. Luna, who has operated in the shadows long enough, emerges with fire in her voice and facts in her hands. With access to confidential communications, legal filings, and suppressed emails dating back years, she becomes Caroline's greatest ally and the key to unseating an empire. Together, they unravel a tangled web of deception that stretches deep into the core of Forrester Creations. The first target, Thomas Forrester. Once protected by the Forrester name, Thomas now stands in the crosshairs of a legal and public relations nightmare. Documents reveal that Thomas and other members of the board, Steffi Forrester, Ridge Forrester, and even Eric Forrester, deliberately buried Caroline's claims of extortion and used her presumed death as leverage to take sole control of Douglas's future. With Caroline dead, Thomas positioned himself as the grieving father and secured sympathy, silence, and ultimately custody. But the lie was never buried. And now it's resurfaced with teeth. As Caroline files a formal motion in family court to regain full custody of Douglas, she unleashes a series of affidavits and recorded testimonies that paint Thomas not as a grieving widower, but as a manipulator willing to exploit a fabricated death for power. The legal documents are damning. Caroline provides proof that she was forced into hiding after receiving threats linked to financial blackmail and was advised by legal counsel to fake her death to disappear. She stayed silent to protect Douglas. But now that the threat has passed, she's back and she wants her son. The Forrester board is blindsided. Ridge is furious, not only at the revelation that he was lied to, but also at the threat to Forrester Creations' pristine image. Steffi scrambles to contain the legal chaos while trying to maintain control of the public narrative. But Luna is one step ahead. She launches a coordinated social media campaign designed to reveal what she calls the truth behind the legacy. A piercing exposé into how Forrester Creations for decades has used family loyalty as a shield to protect corruption and silence dissent. She calls out the board by name. Posts go viral within hours. Hashtags trend globally. Screenshots of internal documents and quotes from former employees begin circulating. Luna's strategy is clear: weaponize the truth, force transparency, and make Forrester pay for the decades it has buried inconvenient truths beneath designer fabrics and perfume launches. Within days, the backlash is immense. Protesters gather outside Forrester's Beverly Hills headquarters. Influencers cancel collaborations. Buyers put pending contracts on hold. Department stores call for statements. Ridge and Steffi are forced into emergency meetings with PR teams, lawyers, and shareholders. The Forrester name, once untouchable, is now being dissected in every gossip blog and business journal from Los Angeles to Paris. Internally, the boardroom is a battlefield. Ridge demands damage control. Steffi argues for silence. Eric calls for unity. But Thomas is isolated. No one knows how to defend him, and many suspect he's guilty of more than what Caroline has revealed. With the company's integrity on the line, Ridge makes a shocking move. Thomas is suspended indefinitely from all operations at Forrester Creations, pending an internal review. But Caroline is not interested in corporate consequences. Her focus remains on Douglas. The child, now old enough to understand more than anyone expected, is caught in the middle of a war between the people who claim to love him. Caroline moves quickly, requesting emergency temporary custody through the courts and demanding supervised visitation for Thomas. She argues that Thomas manipulated Douglas's emotional grief to serve his own rise within Forrester Creations. Her lawyers produce therapist notes, school records, and personal journal entries Douglas kept during the years his mother was gone. Entries that show confusion, anxiety, and depression rooted in his father's secrecy. The judge, stunned by the credibility of Caroline's evidence, grants her request for a formal hearing and grants her immediate temporary custody. Meanwhile, Luna's digital campaign continues to snowball. Every new post brings a wave of media scrutiny. The hashtag Forrester cover-up hashtag becomes a rallying cry for those who've always suspected the fashion house wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Former models speak out. Disgruntled employees confirm years of intimidation and nepotism. Luna shares confidential minutes from past board meetings that show how dissenting voices were shut out, how non-family shareholders were slowly squeezed out, how power was consolidated behind the Forrester name. Luna's campaign isn't just about Caroline anymore. It's about dismantling the illusion of legacy. Back in the Forrester mansion, the family is at war. Brooke confronts Ridge for his role in all of this. She demands accountability, not just for the company, but for their family's integrity. Hope, horrified by Thomas's actions, begins questioning her relationship with him and reevaluating her role in defending the Forrester legacy. RJ, shocked by Luna's involvement and the ruthlessness of her actions, confronts her directly. He still loves her, but he doesn't recognize this version of her. Luna stands her ground. She tells RJ she's done watching good people get silenced. She believes in justice, even if it means taking down the people he calls family. With pressure mounting, Ridge and Steffi are forced to make a painful decision. They issue a formal public statement acknowledging the truth of Caroline's return and the improprieties within Forrester leadership. They agree to support an external audit of board decisions over the last 5 years and commit to restructuring leadership to include more non-family oversight. It's a move made out of desperation, not principle, but it works. Some partners begin to return. The media shifts its tone. Forrester survives barely, but the brand is permanently altered. Still, Caroline isn't finished. She wins her custody hearing. The judge grants her full legal and physical custody of Douglas, with visitation rights for Thomas only after a psychological evaluation and 6 months of family therapy. Thomas, disgraced and abandoned by the company he sacrificed everything for, disappears from public view. Caroline reclaims her life with her son. She buys a home away from the Forrester estate. She gives interviews about her experience, always calm, always composed, never vindictive, but always clear that the truth had to come out. And it did. As for Luna, she becomes a voice for transparency in the fashion industry. She launches a podcast. She builds a platform. She uses her influence to spotlight voices that were ignored. Though her relationship with RJ is strained, she remains firm in her convictions. She didn't set out to destroy Forrester, she set out to reveal the truth. If it crumbled under the weight of that truth, so be it. The Bold and the Beautiful has never been more explosive, more politically sharp, or more personal. What began as a supposed death in 2019 has now unraveled the very foundation of the most powerful family in Los Angeles fashion. The name Forrester still hangs over the building, but behind it, everything has changed. And nothing will ever be the same again. The Bold and the Beautiful has entered a new era of power plays, betrayal, and corporate warfare, and at the center of the storm stands Caroline Spencer, rising from the ashes of her supposed death to reclaim not just her son, but her voice, her legacy, and her family's name. No longer operating from the shadows, Caroline has now aligned herself with Spencer Publications, sealing a fragile truce with Karen Spencer and strategically leveraging her renewed presence in Los Angeles to ignite a media firestorm that threatens to reduce Forrester Creations to rubble. What began as a custody battle over Douglas has now exploded into a full-blown war between two dynasties, Spencer and Forrester, and the battlefield is no longer just the courtroom. It's public perception. It's media domination. And it's about who controls the narrative. Seeing an opportunity as Luna Nozawa continued to hover near Will Spencer, forming an almost inexplicable connection, Caroline reached out to Karen Spencer with an olive branch and a plan. Years of distance and coldness between them melted away in the heat of common purpose. They had a shared name, shared blood, and now shared incentive to stand against the Forrester empire. Caroline carefully orchestrated a reunion, not just as a daughter, but as a strategist. She knew Karen still held influence at Spencer Publications. And she knew that in the current media climate, stories about corporate abuse, cover-ups, and inherited privilege would catch fire. Together, they engineered the takedown of Forrester's public image through the very tool Forrester had once underestimated: journalism. The first strike came in the form of a damning multi-part investigative report titled Beneath the Glamour: The Hidden Culture of Forrester Creations. With the full weight of Spencer Publications behind her, Caroline ensured the exposé hit every screen, device, and newsstand in Los Angeles within hours. The article painted Forrester Creations as a toxic, unregulated powerhouse ruled by nepotism, intimidation, and unchecked executive control. The piece featured anonymous accounts from former models, designers, assistants, and interns, all of whom described hostile work environments, retaliatory firings, and pressure to stay silent about internal misconduct. They spoke of the overwhelming power Steffi and Ridge held, of boardroom manipulation, and of being blacklisted in the industry for speaking out. None of the quotes were attributed directly, but every story carried weight, credibility, and the kind of emotional rawness that couldn't be faked. And if that wasn't enough, the story included a deep dive into Caroline's own narrative, how she was written out of her son's life after being presumed dead, how her return was met with cold hostility by the Forrester board, and how she had to fight her way back into a life that should never have been stolen from her in the first place. Her words were precise, calculated, and cutting. This isn't just my story. This is a company that protects itself at all costs, even if it means burying the truth. The response was instant and catastrophic for Forrester. Clients began pulling out of deals. Influencers who once praised their collections started issuing statements of concern. Fashion media swarmed. Journalists dug into every corner of the company. Social media erupted with the hashtag Forrester exposed. Longtime allies grew silent. Shareholders demanded answers. Even some internal employees began to speak quietly to reporters, confirming the pattern of behavior outlined in the article. Ridge Forrester didn't take the attack lightly. Outraged by what he called defamatory and malicious journalism, he called an emergency press conference and announced that Forrester Creations would be filing a defamation lawsuit against Spencer Publications and Caroline Spencer personally. He declared that the Forrester name had always stood for excellence, family, and creativity, and that he would not allow lies and manipulation to destroy it. He was adamant. He would fight back. He would clear the family's name. He would crush this smear campaign. But in doing so, Ridge walked straight into Caroline's trap. Because to pursue legal action, Ridge and his team were forced to open the books. Discovery began. And that meant turning over internal documents, email threads, HR files, and financial records. And that's when the real damage began. The legal process revealed far more than Ridge ever intended. Hidden in the legal disclosures were memos and emails showing clear knowledge of workplace complaints that had gone uninvestigated. There were records of severance agreements signed under NDA, documents pointing to hush money paid to former employees. There were inconsistencies in payroll involving temporary contractors and models. But worst of all was the revelation of a series of side deals. Ridge had personally negotiated off-the-record payments to secure loyalty from certain designers, kickbacks from distributors, and inflated invoices signed off without board approval. The media got wind of it. Not because Spencer Publications leaked it, but because the court filings became public record. Suddenly, Ridge's lawsuit wasn't just a defensive measure, it became a window into Forrester's hidden rot. News outlets who had previously stayed neutral now began following the money trail. Every leak, every document, every poorly redacted email became a new headline. The story wasn't about Caroline anymore. It was about a company losing control of its secrets. Inside Forrester, chaos reigned. Steffi was forced to cancel runway shows and reschedule meetings with overseas buyers. PR teams scrambled to spin stories, but none of the usual strategies worked. The public didn't want excuses, they wanted accountability. Ridge, still trying to maintain control, faced increasing pressure from board members to step aside. Eric, already shaken by the direction the company had taken, fell silent. Thomas, still in the aftermath of the Douglas custody fallout, had no authority left. Hope began distancing herself from the brand, issuing a carefully worded statement about rebuilding trust and reflecting on internal culture. Meanwhile, Caroline watched the collapse from the safety of the Spencer Tower. She didn't gloat. She didn't posture. She simply moved forward. With Karen by her side, she outlined the next phase of her plan, a foundation for young designers outside of the Forrester influence. A nonprofit initiative to support talent that had been overlooked or blacklisted. Luna, now a rising media voice thanks to her work with the Exposé, joined as co-director of outreach. Her reputation, once mired in controversy, had been reshaped. She wasn't the scandal anymore. She was the whistleblower who stood up to a fashion giant. Caroline's comeback was no longer just a personal victory. It became a symbol of reclamation. She had fought back from a faked death, reclaimed her son, reconnected with her family, and taken down the empire that tried to erase her. She didn't destroy Forrester Creations, but she cracked its foundation wide open, forcing it to confront the darkness beneath its polished surface. And as Ridge stared down the growing list of subpoenas, media requests, and calls for resignation, he finally understood that the fight was no longer about Caroline. It was about power. And Forrester had lost it. But the war isn't over. New lawsuits are brewing. More voices are coming forward. And behind the scenes, someone is still pulling strings, someone not yet revealed, with a deeper connection to both families, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The game has changed. The legacy has shifted. And the bold and the beautiful is more dangerous than ever.